Welcome back to Third Eye Weekly, brought to you by AT&T. I'm your host, Zach.
I'm your host, Lisa.
And it's Change Week here at BTR. We have a lot of great interviews on the site this week. One of the most notable being a longtime returning guest, a favorite of ours to talk with. His name is Lee Rainey at the Pew Research Center. He's one of the lead researchers there. And he's done a lot of work with privacy in regards to our cybersecurity and personal information online, and he started this survey about 2.5 years ago now, directly after the Edward Snowden leaks, to determine how American beliefs, values, and behaviors are changing towards the way that they view their privacy and their security. So
he realized that a lot of people are a lot more willing to bring in cameras into the workplace to have that being surveyed, but surveillanced, but not necessarily your home life. There was an idea of maybe a smart thermostat that would be able to see who's in your home, where they are in your home, and how many percent would
Well,
be willing to-
27% said they would be willing to do something like that,
Yeah.
whereas 54% said they would be willing to put cameras in the workplace to ensure safety. And so I think what we're seeing here is, Lee talks about it a lot during the interview, privacy used to be a condition of American life. People don't believe that anymore. The only people who believe that are older people, and they're all dying. So everyone else doesn't believe in privacy as a condition. They believe that privacy is a commodity, and that commodity can be purchased. Now, the only way that it can be purchased is if the reward you get seems worth it. So companies will purchase your information only if you think that you're getting something viable in return. So when you look at this scenario with the cameras in the workplace versus the smart thermostat, what are you getting in return for each? Well, in the workplace, you're getting clearly more security. People are going to be safer. In the home, you're not really getting that much more security. You're going to save money, because you're only going to be getting, heat supplied to the rooms that need it, because it's going to know who's in what room at what time. But is that going to outweigh the fact that people could use such a device to know where you are at all times in your own home? Most Americans think not.
Well, that's the biggest issue, is that all of this government surveillance, there's no transparency in what they actually do with all of the information that they have. So what is going to be that reward when we have a thermostat in our home that's being able to detect where we are in our homes? I can't understand a conceivable reward or greater reward than the phone tapping that already exists in terms of violating our privacy. So I'm very much against that, but I honestly can see in the future that number going up, not to just 20-something%, but 50 and more, because I think a lot of times we have this false sense of security when there is constant surveillance. And in a lot of times when there are video cameras being placed in supermarkets or in jobs, you're not necessarily lowering the risk of crimes happening. You can capture the crime, the person who perpetrated the crime, but you're not necessarily lowering the risk. So these issues are still going to be there, but they'll have this sort of idea that maybe you'll capture people better and easier, but
right, and
that could be possibly the reward.
Yeah, I mean, Lee talks about that a little bit. He says, why is it that as Americans we're still so divided about surveillance programs? And it's because of exactly that, because there's this real rift between those who think it's offering us genuine security and it's decreasing crime, and there are those of us that think, no, it's just capturing moments for later use for whatever reason you want to have. And yes, the act of being observed changes your behavior, but that's not something that's necessarily good. I don't think that's something that's necessarily good either. But people are becoming more and more not only aware but accepting of these kinds of monitoring technologies. The very fact that we've already let go of privacy as a condition of American life seems to signify a very large and monumental shift in our attitude towards being observed. The more we continue to accept being observed, the more it's going to become a part of our life, until we're living in that Orwellian, dystopian Big Brother world where there's a camera staring out of your TV.
Well, I think that's the thing. The more your privacy starts to become more of a commodity and is easily being purchased for that reward, there needs to be some sort of checks and balances going on. That's giving information to the people about how this information is being used in terms of securing your safety. So as long as there's this force that's being put against the constant commodification of privacy, if there's a force there that's realizing and checking what's really going on in terms of that purchase of privacy, then there hopefully wouldn't be this like Orwellian dystopia.
Right.
Well,
I think there's two solutions. One of which we talked about with Lee, and that's basic encryption technologies.
Yeah.
A lot of Americans express a desire to want their information secluded and private, but they don't know how to do it. And as Lee suggests, there are a lot of very basic encryption technologies available that can hide your HP, that can hide your HP address, that can pretty much mask and cloak everything you're doing to a very large extent. And those are readily available to the public. So that's something that everyone should be doing if they're worried about something like this and taking initiative in their own lives. Now, the second option is a cybersecurity police task force made of hybrid robots that can make sure no one ever gets out of line. And I think that's what's really coming up down the pipeline in the decades to come.
Yeah, that should be interesting.
Well, we got a great article on our interview with Lee, and you can tune into this week's episode to catch the rest of it. Third Eye Weekly brought to you by AT&T. I'm your host, Zach.
I'm your host, Lisa.
That's all, folks.